Hey everyone, I'm Fletcher, and this is Empowered by Women. In August of 2021, I launched Book of Bijou, which is a line of chic and innovative jewelry storage. And in January of 2022, we expanded into what you now see as the Empowered by Women platform. I really wanted to create a centralized space where we can really put emphasis on our mission of women empowerment and community over competition. It really truly does fill my cup to be surrounded by so many of you inspiring women, and the energy that you bring to me and our platform on a daily basis is unmatched. You really all do fuel me with so much motivation to continue doing what I'm doing, and for that, I thank you. Before we jump into the episode, please be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you are listening, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. And also don't forget to share your favorite episodes with your fellow female founders so that we can continue growing our platform and furthering our mission. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this next interview with another incredible woman in entrepreneurship that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. And today we have the beautiful Kat Fletcher. She is the founder of Crafted Wild. She specializes in branding and packaging, which I know all of our audience is going to be very interested in since we work with a lot of product-based businesses. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. So first and foremost, Kat, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey, your background, all the things that have led you up till this point to becoming this branding and packaging specialist.
Yeah. So I was always creative ever since I was a child. Um, and I, from quite a young age, I kind of knew that I wanted to be in graphic design, like age around 10. So I used to play around on like PowerPoint and Microsoft Publisher and things like this. And I just loved the whole graphic design thing. And then I studied at uni. Worked for about 5 years in-house in London, just learning skills and working for different companies. And it was during this time that I got chronic fatigue. So I had it for 2 years and I was still able to work, but it was really hard. Like my life was really, I would say it was dampened. And the onset of it happened because I was burnt out. Like I was commuting to London every day for like an hour and a half each way. I was going to the gym a lot and I was just pushing myself so much. And my body just stopped. It just gave up and I wasn't able to bring myself up again until after around 2 years. I worked with a nutritional therapist and he helped me to get my health back on track. This was around the same time that lockdown was being lifted from COVID. And I just knew that I wanted something new, like a different life. So I quit my job and I flew to Costa Rica. And that's where I started traveling. So I traveled for a few months and then I had the idea in my head that I was going to go freelance because I knew that I wanted to continue to work and travel. And I did. I started, I didn't really see it at first as like, I'm going to start a business. I was just like, oh, I'll just go freelance. I'll just get some clients. And then after a while, I realized, oh no, it's actually easier if you call this a business and see it as a business. So things grew from there. I was, yeah, I was traveling whilst growing my business. So I was staying in each place for maybe like 6 weeks to a few months. And yeah, things just evolved. I had a kind of a refinement of my business about 6 months ago, which was that I decided that I just wanted to work with women, really focusing on helping women express themselves through their business and create something that they really love. And this was actually the integration of a healing process that I've been through because I was in an abusive relationship about 2 years before. And I really just wanted to use this experience, like channel it into a purpose of helping women be more empowered. And I believe one way we can do this is through our business. So yeah, that's kind of like the story behind me and my brand.
Amazing. So where are you now?
Bali.
You're in Bali. Okay, amazing. So I am curious about the whole transition from, you were just kind of looking at it as a freelance. You didn't really look at it as a business. but then you said it was easier once you started promoting it as a business. I want you to break that down for us a little bit more. Do you mean it was like easier to get clients? Was it easier for people to finally pull the trigger and say, yeah, I want to work with her because you started promoting it in a certain way?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I first started, I thought that it would be easier to just be like a freelancer because calling it a business made it seem like there was going to be more work and it had to be like more professional and all these things. And it does, but it makes it much easier to attract people to you and yeah, like get people to actually trust you. And also it just feels better. Like I really enjoy having my own brand and all of the things that I've put into my business. That's not just the client work, like the types of marketing that I do. I'm really happy that I have this platform because that is what our businesses are. They're not just a way of making money, they are a platform for us to spread messages and help people aside from the people who are paying you. There are lots of things you can do in your business to inspire and support everyone.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. The part where, you do feel like you have to be more polished and more professional when it's officially become a business, right? So obviously dealing with branding and packaging, there is a level of, bringing the person's identity and authenticity into their branding and their packaging and everything that they're putting out into the world. So is there kind of like a fine line of just being you and doing things you would have normally done versus, okay, but now you're a business, so you should probably be doing it this way a little bit more? Like, how do you still feel like you can show up authentically and you're not like selling yourself out just because all of a sudden you're now taking on this professional, what is the word? I can't think of the word, but you're now a business.
Yeah. I think that's such a good question. And it's such a balance. Because I've definitely been in the realm of thinking as well of like um I think getting a bit in my head about this idea that you have to present yourself as the expert and you have to present yourself as having it all together. And anything to do with showing your humanness or your vulnerability is like, I don't know, I guess I used to have this story of like, oh, people won't trust me or they won't see me as reliable. But the thing is with businesses now and brands is that people really connect to the human behind the business. And when it comes to showing who we are, this is really what attracts people to you. And when I brand with women, I really try and help them infuse who they are into their business. And this, what it does is it opens up a potential doorway, a dangerous one, which is that we start to connect our worth to our business. So what it really is about finding the balance between infusing who you are into your business, but detaching your worth. And that's a practice and that's a balance. But yeah, in terms of the future of brands, like it really is the human brands that are excelling. It's the brands that show the founder, the personality, the values, the story, the vulnerable story. Like there is a way to be gracefully vulnerable without just like dumping everything on people, which I think is something that people worry about when it comes to opening up about your story. We don't want to share too much, but we want to share because people say that we should. And that's a balance too, but there's a way to do it.
Gracefully vulnerable. I love that phrase. Can you break that down for us as well? Like for people that aren't used to putting themselves out there, or maybe they are looking to kind of rebrand their whole business and they want to be more of the face behind what they're doing, or they want to bring in that personal touch, but they're not used to it. They're not used to connecting those two things. What advice do you have to start kind of showing up more vulnerably and more authentically?
Um, I think there's like two parts to this. There's the mindset work and more of like the self-development work to cultivate safety within the self. So that we can practice this feeling of knowing that it is okay to show up and that it is okay to tell people who we are, the messy parts as well. And the second part would be the practical. So just gradually doing it. Like it's always going to feel a little bit scary. Like when I first started going on podcasts, I remember before going on, my heart would be beating really fast. But it's not like that anymore because just gradually you expose yourself to the things that are a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Yeah, and just I think one more thing is having like good female support around you. Like I always feel like my business is thriving more when I have good female friends around me,
Mhm.
or women who have just helped me, like healers, coaches, people like this.
Mhm. And then showing up in that way is such a great way to start forming those connections, right? Because you're giving them opportunity to connect with you on a more personal level. That's how you start building your community and building the supportive group of people or women beside you. That is what we're all about for sure. And I'm always, encouraging women, especially that feel like, I don't know anyone, blah, 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 just start showing up, just start telling your story. And then people will say, like, oh, wow, we have like a lot of common. Or they'll start, sharing some of their tips, sharing some of their insights. And that's how you start forming these really special connections and people that you can start leaning on. So that's
Mm.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah.
So before we dive into what other businesses and stuff should be doing or not doing with their business or their branding and their packaging, I want to dive into your story just a little bit more. With you traveling and starting this business or trying to, turn your freelancing into a business, what have been some of like your biggest roadblocks in building your business? And how can others kind of follow suit and if they want to have that kind of lifestyle where they're still traveling, where they don't feel like they have to be tied down to one place, but they're still building something that they are very passionate about?
Mm. Um, so when I started my business, I was in Central America, started in Guatemala and then Nicaragua. And the places that I was in actually weren't that set up for digital nomads, really. Like there weren't that many co-works. The cafe Wi-Fi was a bit temperamental. I did it and I don't regret it because it was really fun. Like I had a lot of adventures. But I think if I was starting my business again and I was doing the whole digital nomad thing, I would come to somewhere like Bali or Thailand. Bali specifically, because Bali has got a lot of good co-works. It's not very expensive, so you don't have that financial pressure. And there's a lot of other people here in Bali who are doing the whole business startup thing. So there's networking events. There's people that you can just have interesting business conversations with, people who can put you in the right direction, and even potential clients. So yeah, making sure that you're in the right location and also just not putting too much pressure on yourself to work loads. Because looking back in my business journey, I think I did a lot of things that I didn't really need to do. I didn't really go to anyone for guidance, which I kind of wish I had, because I think someone could have helped me cut a bit of time there. But yeah, those would be those would be the main things. Just make sure you're in the right location and find balance and look for support.
Okay, I know you're all well invested into this episode so far, but I wanted to just take a quick moment to tell you all about Cast Magic because this tool has been a lifesaver for me and the Empowered by Women podcast. And we don't like to gatekeep around here, okay? So if you also have a podcast, a YouTube channel, or really produce any kind of long form content, you really need to introduce Cast Magic into your life if you haven't already. It used to take me forever to find specific clips, create captions and titles and descriptions, and all the things that come with running a podcast, but Cast Magic has made that 10 times easier for me. And as a mom with a very busy schedule, I am all about simplifying and streamlining my to-do list. So seriously, save yourself some time and even multiply your usable content and download it ASAP. The link will be included in the show notes, but let's go ahead and get back to this awesome interview. I think that tip on being mindful of where you're starting out or where you're wanting to travel to and recognizing, okay, these resources are already readily available and setting yourself up for that foundational success, I think is really key. So let's dive into the branding and packaging of things with your work that you do. Like, what are some of the common, I guess, mistakes? I don't know if you want to label it that people have with their branding and packaging.
Perhaps too much focus on like the logo and maybe getting like a cheaper brand design to like cut corners, but not looking at the strategy. Because the strategy is the first part of the branding. So for those who don't know, we start with the strategy, which is looking at your values, your mission, your purpose. We also do practical research into your audience so you can actually know what these people are looking for and what language resonates with them. And then we craft the overall kind of vision for the brand and the brand copy, just so that you have that like heartfelt essence that people can actually connect with. And then afterwards, we do the brand design, which is the colors, logo, photography, packaging, all of those things. So making sure that when you are doing this branding process, that you're doing the strategy work as well. And I'm conscious that not everyone has the budget to do a whole branding project like this, but there are things that you can do on your own, at least to look at that strategy work. So, you know, do some research into it. I also have some free resources on my website that you can use. But yeah, just consider your greater vision, your mission. All of these things are really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's such an important tip because so often we get so excited that we're launching this new thing, right? And we immediately go into what is everything going to look like? Packaging is so much fun. Let me start designing everything. But then when you go into the strategy and the mission afterwards, it makes it a little bit harder to connect those two things, right? So getting all of that back end work, understanding why you're doing what you're doing, who are you trying to reach, and then workshopping it to, okay, now that I know what I'm doing and who I'm trying to reach and who I am and what this brand is, now let's see if we can create packaging that reflects all of that.
Mm.
And I love that you also mentioned that, you know, you don't have to have a big budget to just get started. There are certain ways to do it. So first of all, before I forget, where are everyone able to find all of those resources?
So my website is craftedwild.co.uk/resources. That's where you'll find them. And I have a little blog as well if you want more information.
Okay, amazing. We'll come back to that at the end, but I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there before I forget. So what are some of the, you know, absolute like, just don't do this with your branding and packaging? Like, what are some key do's and some key don'ts?
Yeah, don't I would say don't go to Fiverr or Upwork and get a cheap graphic designer to do your branding. I know it's really tempting, but a lot of designers, like more expensive designers, but also higher quality designers, do something called a brand intensive, where it's like a 1 day or 2 day thing where they do your branding in that time. And I know it might seem like for the amount of time that those designers are giving you, it's a really high price. But designers who are more advanced in their career can create quality branding in a very quick time because they have the resources, they have the skills. So if you have that kind of choice, like you're on a budget and you're thinking either I go this way to Fiverr or Upwork and I get a really cheap designer to do it, or I do a brand intensive with a more expensive designer, do the more expensive designer. That's one thing. And what else? If it comes down to it, and yeah, if it comes down to it, choose a more minimal packaging. Like if it's not within your budget to be having like a really expensive designed packaging that's got lots of like custom art and things like this, you can still have something really beautiful and minimal. Yeah.
Amazing. I think it's really important to recognize the investment that'll go into it, right? And know that by investing in high quality work, that is going to hold you off for a longer term, right? Than just, you know, getting a quick and easy and cheap design just to hold you over in the meantime, because eventually you're going to recognize, oh, maybe this isn't what I really was going for, but it was what I could afford at the time. And now I'm having to reinvest again into new packaging, right? So
Mm.
what about like bringing in like their personality into it? Is it, I mean, what kind of tips do you have? Because normally I've seen a lot of people and women, you know, kind of just go with, oh, this is what I like. These are the colors I like. This is the fonts that I like. but how can they really bring in their personality and their identity into the packaging while still being cognizant that it is a brand and a business that they're promoting and not necessarily just all the things that they like?
Yeah, because when it comes to infusing you and your personality and your brand, it's not as much about your preferences as it is about your story and you showing up as a person. And that's not to say that we don't take into account your preferences in the design process as well, because I do believe that in order for a business owner to grow their business, they have to be energetically aligned to the brand. And if it's a branding that they really just don't resonate with, it's going to be hard for them to grow that business because kind of like subconsciously, they're not really going to want to. But part of how I approach design is blending the business owner's preferences with the audience preferences. And usually, if you're aligned in business, those two things are going to be very similar anyway. So if you've got like a very loud personality, very bold, your audience are probably going to be resonating with that as well. If you've got a calmer and softer personality, then that's what your audience are going to be resonating with. So in terms of bringing this to the packaging, to infuse like yourself into that, I love to tell the story on the brand packaging. So there are lots of places on the packaging where you can put this. You can put it on the inside lid. You can put it in the unboxing experience in a little pamphlet. You can put it on the side of a box. Just giving a little bit more information about the story behind your brand, whether it's how you came about or what your values are or what your mission is. This is a great way that you can bring your personality in. On your website, you can do this as well. Tell your story, talk about your values, show photos of yourself or videos of yourself talking about your brand. And then when it comes to the actual design of the packaging, this is where we really want to think about what the audience are going to resonate with. So if you're a candle brand and you want to create an experience for people that is very calm and soft, then of course this needs to be reflected in the packaging. And we can use intentional design choices to do this based on what type of fonts we're choosing, what type of color we're choosing. Yeah, this is how we use visual aesthetic to create emotions in people. That's part of my work.
What about for the people that kind of want to separate the two, right? They don't really want to put like their personal story out there, but they still want some way that they can differentiate their branding from the next one, right? From the next candle brand, from the next whatever it is. And usually that differentiation part is the story, right? Is this the back end things of who's starting this, who's the face behind the brand, why did they get started, what are their values? But for people that are like, no, I just want to be completely separate, which I've come across a few people like that, how can they differentiate their branding and their packaging?
I feel like that's a really hard one for me to answer because that's not my work. Like,
Okay.
I'm gonna try though. So I would say if you don't want to be like putting yourself behind the brand, then you need to dive in way deeper to who your audience are and what they're looking for. So do more research into them. Maybe you could hold focus groups, showing them the different packaging designs and seeing which ones they resonate with the most. Do more practical research, interviews, things like this, because if you're not using that leverage of your own story and your own personality and values, then you need to be finding that leverage somewhere else, and that will be in your audience.
Yeah, I love that you already mentioned the focus groups, but do you have any other tips for how you can start getting into the mind of your audience and figuring out what it is that they're looking for or that they would resonate with?
Yeah, so I actually just created a free workbook called the Connect with Your Audience workbook. And it's got some practical tips in there. So often when it comes to your audience, you might find information online asking you like, what are their hobbies, what are their values, this, that, but really it's all just guesswork. And I wanted to create something where people could do practical research so they're not just guessing. So one of the things would be to look at reviews. this is a really great one. If you look at reviews that you've received and also reviews that people have given similar brands in your industry with the same audience, you can start to pick out key themes and language that people are using consistently to talk about what they value, what they enjoyed about a product or a service. And seeing that specific language that people are actually using is going to be so, so insightful. Another one is to listen to podcasts. So if you listen to podcasts that your audience also listen to, you can start to, again, pick out key themes as to what things they are interested in, and also podcasts that your audience are going on.
That's a really great tip. That's not something that I would have considered. So we've obviously been talking about a lot of product brands, based businesses, but what about like service-based businesses? How does branding really come into play with what they do? And do you work with a lot of service-based businesses?
Yeah, I work with both service and product-based businesses. So when it comes to service-based, the same principles do apply, like tell your story, talk about your values. I'd say really talk about the customer experience. So if in your branding, you can help people envision what it would be like working with you and also what the end result would be, that's really powerful. So you can do things like telling client stories, creating creative content that tells the story of what that experience would be like. Use photography. Photography is really big in branding because people project themselves onto the photos that they see of your brand. So if you're someone, say, who's helping, I don't know, let's say you're a healer and you're helping women to heal and then thrive in life. If you use brand photography of women thriving in life, then the women who see that are going to project themselves onto that photography and think like, oh, that could be me. So yeah, really focusing on this experience side of things is very strong for service brands.
Do you have any do's and don'ts when it comes to how you're telling your story? Like, have you seen any patterns where like people write their story a certain way and you see that it doesn't really translate when their audience is reading it, or it still doesn't make that connection?
Yeah. So when it comes to brand storytelling, we have like our main brand story, and this would probably be on the about page. I would say like get vulnerable, but also tell it in a way where there is a flow that shows your journey of empowerment. Because this is important to help people feel inspired by your story rather than depressed by your story. So part of being gracefully vulnerable is about sharing the things that perhaps we're scared to and that are quite big, but doing it in a way that shows how we have overcome. And this is very inspiring for people. The other type of storytelling that we have in branding is the continuous stories that we're always telling in our Instagram captions and our email marketing. Something happened to you the other day and it inspired a thought, and now you want to share it. This is the consistent storytelling. And again, just doing it in a way where it's insightful and inspiring and empowering. I would say that's the best tip.
Now, I want to go back to kind of your personal journey through it all. So knowing that you're kind of this digital nomad, how are you able to kind of communicate your own story and your services and trying to find clients while you're going in all these different places? Like, what does that even look like?
So in terms of telling my story, I do it in different ways. Obviously, I've got stories on my website, in my email marketing and Instagram captions, a little bit at a time. You don't have to go all out, or you can if you want to have like a big reveal of your story, then you absolutely can, but I prefer to just do it in little increments as to not like overwhelm myself. I like keeping people updated in what I'm doing in life, but I also have a lot of boundaries around this because I actually just had like a 3-month break from Instagram because I just felt so exhausted by feeling like I owed people my life. And I understand that I created that. But I felt like I was often showing people my life on stories, like I'm working on in this cafe today, and now I'm in this place, and this is what I'm working on. But I wasn't really showing myself. I was just showing my life. And I started to feel like, yeah, like disconnected from what I was showing. Like people were living vicariously through me, but they didn't really know me. So I had to have a big break. And now I've come back with a fresh creative energy. And I don't really post on Instagram stories like day to day what I'm doing in my life, because for me it's I like my privacy, but I do like to share parts of myself and my life in my Instagram captions, because that for me feels a bit more curated and boundaried.
Mhm.
So I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is that when it comes to telling your story, it's okay to have boundaries. Like you can do it in the way that you want to. I would encourage you to move through your comfort zone, but you don't have to do it in the way that everyone else is doing it. Find a way to do it that feels balanced and good for you.
Yeah. I think that is a great final note to be ending on, and really recognizing that there is so much power in pausing and reflecting and making sure you are still aligned with what you're doing, because pretty much what you said, like we can get so caught up in like, this is what I've been doing and now I'm just running on autopilot, but then you recognize that actually doesn't like feel good to me anymore. So taking that step back, pausing and thinking, okay, well, how do I want to moving forward? You said 3 months. Obviously, you you can do even just like a short pause, right? Just taking a couple of days to say, wait a minute, something feels off, something doesn't feel right, something feels unaligned, but how can I still keep showing up in a way that feels good to me and that feels authentic? So I'm so glad that you shared that. Kat, you have been amazing. Where can everyone find you, connect with you, and where are you most active?
So you can find me obviously on my website, that's craftedwild.co.uk. And I'm also on Instagram. That's probably the place that I'm most active, which is Crafted Wild Studio.
Amazing. And of course, that will all be linked in the show notes. So be sure to connect with her, um, get little snippets of where she's traveling to next. But Kat, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you have shared so many great little insights, especially for people that are just getting started or feeling like they need to go ahead and take that leap and start to rebrand and really make that deeper connection with what they're putting out there. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Another incredible interview with yet another inspiring woman in entrepreneurship. I hope you guys loved that episode just as much as I did. Before we leave off, if you yourself are also a woman entrepreneur, I would love for you to consider joining our Empowered by Women directory. We're looking for women-owned product and service-based businesses in the US to help us build the go-to place for our communities to find local women to shop with and connect with, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. All of the details can be found on www.empoweredbywomen.com/apply-directory. Of course, that's going to be linked in the show notes below, and you're also welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions. But other than that, thank you again so much for joining us, and I will see you in the next episode.